The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hi again, this is Ralph Boehm, Legislative Upstate, and welcome back, Erica.
Hi, thank you, Ralph. I'm Representative Erica Layon from Derry, and it's good to be back on the show with you. So we've just finished up our legislative session for the year, and we had the really fun week where the House and Senate, when we have a disagreement, get together in some small groups in order to figure out if we can come to an agreement or if the bills that are there just go away. I actually had the opportunity to chair two of those committees, and one of them was actually one of the most followed committees of conference. We had a bill that was actually on therapeutic cannabis, because right now we have 4 different kinds of doctors that can prescribe opiates for pain, but they can't certify a patient to use cannabis for pain, which is pretty wild. So the bill had fixed that and also made it so that kids that don't have a pediatrician, but they have a pediatric oncologist, because they're just trying to make it to the next year, that pediatric oncologist can do that. So what the Senate went ahead and did was we had put in some electronic bail reform, so that right now if you go out on bail, it's all paper-based, and it takes a couple of weeks for them to put it in the court system. So the House said, let's spend $1 million and turn this to be electronic. So if you get arrested in Manchester one day and then you're arrested in Nashua the next day, they can look it up in the system and they know you're already out on bail. Senate took that out of the budget, and we have another 5 bills that are about bail reform that criminal justice decided to hold on to. The Senate put one of those onto our bill there. So, and they basically said that they were going to choose which kind of bail reform was going to pass, and if we didn't like it, it was their way or the highway. As we were working through all of this, we offered to have our House bill, which is the one about making it so that docs who can prescribe opiates can do the cannabis, and that little change for the kids. There's actually only 8 kids on the therapeutic cannabis program. It's rare, but they have some pretty serious conditions that to do that, and $2 million for the bail, electronic bail system. But the Senate wasn't willing to agree. We actually have a clip of sort of the end of this where it gives you a little bit of an idea of what happened as we were trying to wrap things up.
I'm not sure that we're going to find any agreement on this. I think we probably should, at this point, agree to disagree, because I don't see any way to change Section 3 to something that'll pass the House. And if it won't pass the House, it's an exercise in futility. Okay. Well, I thank everybody for their time and for their effort on this. I hope that we can have a similar effort as the Criminal Justice Committee works through these 5 retained bills, so that we have something that not only has bipartisan agreement in the House, but also has bipartisan agreement with the Senate, so that when well, yes, but we need to have, I recognize that. I recognize that, but what we need to have is agreement in the House, because the House are the ones that are closest to the people, and we're hearing more from our specific constituents, both those who need to make sure that people are staying in and those who have experienced some of these fringe cases, that even though they're an edge case, they're the things that can lose a house or a family. I asked for your involvement with the retained bills so that we have something that's acceptable to everybody, so that in early January we have a bill pass on the floor, and if it's a Senate bill, have a concurrence. If it's a House bill, move quickly in the Senate, so that we are only 6 months behind, but with a far better product as opposed to a Band-Aid. So I would ask for your help and commitment on that.
And I would say that would be what is different than the past 3 bienniums, is that we could start with a change and actually work together from the beginning of a piece of legislation, instead of in both separate houses and then trying to come together at the last minute. It's just, we need to be together from the beginning, and then there's no surprises for anybody.
Yeah, the last one speaking there was the chair of criminal justice.
Yes. He's the one who is leading the efforts to make sure that we don't just have some fix that makes people say, yep, I did something about bail reform, but actually fixes the system.
Right.
So I think it's very important. So Ralph, you did some committees of conference too, right?
Right, yeah. Also, before we start again, and Erica and I did not agree on what we're going to wear.
No. We did not coordinate that. Otherwise, I might have worn a Navy shirt with a red blazer.
Right, yeah. Also, if you notice, behind us is not the State House, it's the State House with all the legislators, the reps behind us. And one of the jokes I gave a little while ago was instead of finding Waldo, find the baby. Also, I'm at the very end on this side, so if you look. And
I'm just
you're in the
over
middle,
your
so-
left shoulder. So, yep, right over that left shoulder right there in the red.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, yes, I did a couple of committees of conference. Both failed. They were both on election law. One on funding of new voting machines. Current machines are end of life. They are accurate, but the end of life, one breaks, you can't get parts for them anymore. So no new parts are available. So the Ballot Law Commission is looking at a number of new machines to replace them with. We've sort of given the Secretary of State a deadline. In this August, he's going to be having a thing to look at the different machines. What I've heard, there's only one machine that will take the existing ballots as they are, so the state doesn't have to go look for two different printing companies, because, some towns that won't change right away, and nothing's going to happen until after the 24 election. So those machines, the AccuVote machines, will still be there. The problem is, a lot of us in election law, bipartisan, want the Secretary of State to pay for the new machines. In 2000, Congress passed the HAVA Act, Help America Vote Act, and they gave states all kinds of money. New Hampshire got $17 million. Guess how much we still have? $14 million. So we figured it's going to cost $1 to $3 million to pay for the machines, for the new machines. So, and they'll still end up, because they make an interest on this money. So, but the Secretary of State is against doing that. And apparently so is the Senate. So here's my clip on that.
So, if you want to change your opinion and
Wanna try to
support the
clip?
portal, we are willing to support the portal.
Oh,
I have been a moderator, or had been a moderator in Rochester for about 30 years. Before the voting machines, after the voting machines. I know
And
that
Senator
if
Gray
a
trying
person
to
comes in and
show
the
that
voting machine is not
the towns need to pay.
cooperating at that point of time, that there is a side pocket on the voting machines where those ballots can be put in, and the voters do not have to wait after they mark their ballot for that paper ballot to be put into the machine. The moderator
So
will do
also,
it afterwards.
people at the chair,
And
that's
I also
Senator
know
Perkins
that as a
quoted
moderator,
from
before the voting machines
Seacoast.
were there, that
Senator Mike.
there was a number of
Keith
people
Murphy.
that were willing and able
I've known him for years.
count ballots.
And Senator Jim
again,
Gray from Stratford.
I don't have any
And on this
problem
side, Connie Lane,
with
who's
a
the
city or
ranking
town
Democrat.
who wants to have a
Ross
tabulating
Berry,
machine,
who's the
to use the tabulating
chair.
machine, but I
Angela
see
Brennan,
no
who's
reason for
a
the
Democrat,
state
and
to
me,
provide special
vice
money
chair.
for that machine. So again, the Senate's position,
So what he's got to do is bring up
3-2
the
vote so far,
Secretary of State and the Deputy
which I'm assured
Secretary
that
of
will go
State.
to a 3-3 vote,
to answer
we
my
need
question.
to, will
groups of individuals actually test the machines, that the election officials, regular voters, legislators, and each of those groups will receive a different grading card so that, we can get the preference of the users of those devices on which one they think is best. I would expect that the Ballot Law Commission will have enough information to be able to approve 1 or 2 devices. They've said they will approve no more than 2 before the end of the year. Once towns are able to start purchasing those devices, it's not going to be an immediate cutoff of using the AccuVote machine. We will allow a transition period so that as as needed, the newer devices can be incorporated into the communities if that's what the communities choose to do.
Continued question?
Yeah, one more. On the first part of town having to, no new town has bought any machines, but I know towns, including mine, have replaced the machines. So here they went to the cost of replacing an older machine. So that's a problem too. Here they just paid, like I said before, for an AccuVote machine that is now, a year from now, obsolete. But yeah, that's not a new town, but they've replaced. And I know a lot of towns have replaced, including ours.
And those are issues that we're going to have to confront. We will get pricing information from the companies, and but it just depends on what the final agreement is and how we're going to deal with it.
Representative Berry.
Yes.
Yeah, the point on that was he was asked earlier about when's the last machine in town that went to the voting machine. He said, well, it was like 10 years ago. And my argument back to him, yeah, it was 10 years ago, but how many towns have bought new machines in that 10 years? And he couldn't have an answer for that. But I know we did, because machines break and you buy new ones. So that's the point we were getting at there. And never get a straight answer. But, yeah, and I've known David Scanlon since I was first there. He started around the same time I did in the legislature. And my first year, in 2005-06, I was in election law. So
you both go way back.
So, yeah, I mean, and we get along. It's just that the point was it's like any bureaucrat. I mean, you see it on television when you never get a straight answer. Oh, yeah, I mean, like, we're going to look at that,
Oh, I should bring some clips from the Administrative Rules Committee.
I'm glad to hear the August 2nd date. I believe the ranking member and myself co-authored a letter to you looking for a more, defined timeline. So I'm glad to hear about August 2nd. How long have we been looking at getting new machines in the state of New Hampshire? When did the conversation first start?
We've been having a conversation about machines probably for 10 years. There are a lot of factors, external factors, that go into that process.
If I might interject, the process in state law starts with the communities coming forward and saying, I would like to go to this machine, please authorize that. And I believe that first machine was 2-3 years ago. Please correct me if I was wrong.
No, that's correct.
So, anyway.
So the conversation's been had for about 10 years.
So, we didn't. So, they scheduled a half hour for all these committees of conference, and we couldn't reach a decision, even though at that time it was like, for going with the House bill, it was all four of us House members said yes. One senator said yes. Mm-hmm. The senator from the Seacoast, but Jim Gray and
Keith Murphy.
Yeah, Keith Murphy, and I've known him for years. Keith Murphy didn't go along, so they said, okay, well, they're going to recess till 2 o'clock that afternoon, and this was 11 o'clock, because we had another bill, 157, which we killed right there on the spot. But the problem with this bill was that it also included the portal, which allowed people to do stuff online, which there's pros and cons on either. The Senate, they put in the bill, that the House also had the bill, but to have it also monitored and taken care of by your town clerks and whatnot. But that's a separate bill, which we're going to bring up again. It was retained in the House, so that's going to be an argument. But over lunch, Senate Quota came up with an amendment that the Secretary said agreed with, but it was vague. And so knowing what was going to happen, if you watch toward the end of the clip, 2 hours later, no, 3 hours later, it ended up with Ross Berry couldn't come back, so the former chair of the committee, Steve Smith, filled in for him, and his first comment when we came back is, Ralph, you're in charge, which has been going on in election law until I became vice chair anyway. But the point was, it only took one vote to not agree, and then it was dead. And I had agreed with the Democrats, I'd vote with them. We're playing games. And for future
Negotiating, trying to build
goodwill, knowing that Steve Smith was going to vote, and that was it. So we killed that anyway. So I shouldn't have said that we negotiate.
Well, that's the only way that things get done. You talk and you try and figure out what the priorities are.
Yeah, and it was interesting, the one rep there, Angela Brennan, she's from Bow, and remember one time when at the hearing, with Jim Gray bringing this up, and the two of us just laid into Senator Gray on the same thing. And the municipal association person said, afterwards, talking to somebody, he said, yeah, and then you should have heard Representative Boehm and Representative Brennan really laying it in. And we sort of tag team each other type thing. But it was funny. But we did the same thing at that hearing too. But anyway, so you want to go into, you already covered the bail system.
I know, but I have a little bit more to talk about with the bail system. I sort of gave the little intro in there.
Okay.
So we actually had a test of the bail system. There's a former state representative, Stacey Lawton, who was elected 3 times in Nashua. She was arrested for possession and distribution of child sexual abuse images. So Lawton actually has a long history of predatory behavior, identity theft and credit card fraud in 2007, a bomb threat to the Southern New Hampshire Hospital in 2015. There was misuse of the 911 system in the lead up to the 2020 election. And she was arrested for stalking a woman in 2022 a couple times before the election, and then was in jail for our organization day. So of the 3 times that Representative Lawton was elected, he had to step down in 2012 and in 2022. But the good news is that Representative Lawton did not just go out on PR bail immediately. As somebody with predatory history, Lawton was held and had a hearing before going out. So the idea that the Senate was talking about, saying that anybody charged with anything is going to walk right away, isn't true. There's way too many people that are released when they shouldn't be, but this case and a few others show that people actually can be held until they see a judge. We just need to make sure that that's taken care of. So as I said before, we have the 5 committee bills that will be worked on this fall. I know that there was just another incident in Manchester where somebody out on bail stabbed somebody, and there's a lot of interest in this. So if you're interested in bail reform, get involved and watch what's happening in those hearings. If you have concerns one way or the other, make them known, because we need to get this right and we need to get it fixed. And we tried to do that with the electronic bail system. But we actually have, I have another clip that we can play. It's Senator Bradley talking about, he's actually the president of the Senate, speaking about how they took that out of the budget so that they could have leverage in order to pass something on bail reform this year. And sitting at that table is in the back on the Senate side, there on the left, is Senator Bradley, who's the president of the Senate, Senator Carson, who is the majority leader in the Senate, and I'm doing the same thing as you right now, Senator Susie, who is the minority leader in the Senate.
Okay, and play it.
Oops, you don't have sound.
Where's the volume? Oh, my fault.
The amount of money for it, because the court system said they need that amount of money to implement it. So I think in terms of good faith, we've
Actually,
generated
that was pretty much it. He said
So
that they had taken out, you can hit pause. on that
also
one.
trying to get with good faith,
So he
if
said,
there are
he said that they took
some
that
of
out
those
of the
12
budget,
crimes, which
just to make sure that we would pass something this year. So it was really, really hard knowing that we could have done more for people, but we also want to make sure that we don't cause new problems by rushing anything. And so I'm sure I'm sure especially in Derry, we're going to be learning a lot more about the whole process of sex offenders because former Representative Lawton's actually living right across the street from a school. And that school borders elementary school that was just closed by the Derry School Board, and that borders on one of the main parks in town that has child programming all summer in our splash
So
pad.
she lives in Derry,
Yes, yes.
but she was a rep in
In Nashua, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
So she must
she's-
have just, the thing is, the first year that she was elected in 2010 or 11.
Yeah, for
She
2011.
she was, came in and then the argument was she hadn't finished her felony. And so she couldn't, the Secretary of State said, no, you can't, because she still hadn't, she got out of jail for his felony at the time, but he hadn't finished the paying back,
The restitution, I think it was
restitution.
$2,000 or $3,000.
So it was still under a court type thing, so, and then in Nashua, she got elected to other offices in town, like, does anybody in Nashua read the newspaper? But, I mean, and then she gets reelected, 2 years ago, and that was okay, that worked, and then she got reelected again, but then right after, in November, she got arrested for stalking. And now she just got arrested again for child,
The child sexual abuse images.
right, and also having child pictures. The person arrested with her was a woman in Hudson.
There was the one she was stalking.
Yeah, and that was the one that was had running a child care. This is all in the news. I'm not making it. It's, arrested for running a child care facility, and was the two of them were participating in naked children pictures. And that's who people vote for to be reps. But anyway,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
so definitely we need the thing on bail reform because, I mean, we've seen it all over the country, the news, where people get out on bail and then right back in jail again.
Yes, so we definitely need that. And I'll just give a quick little update on what's happening in Derry with our schools. So they're moving their meetings to that same middle school across the street. We're turning one of our middle school, closing an elementary school next year, turning one middle school into a 5-6 split, and the other middle school into a 7-8 split. And guess who gets to go into that 5-6 split? The kids who were in kindergarten when COVID hit. So these kids have faced disruption after disruption after disruption. So the good news is that for the families that just said, this is too much disruption, my kids aren't learning what they need to, we actually passed that bill to increase the EFA limit. So this means that if a family of 4 is making $105,000 a year, and you can adjust that up or down by about $18,000 for each person, then you can qualify for the Education Freedom Account, so that you can use that to go find an education that better fits what your child needs. And I know that many families love their local schools, but just there's too many school boards that are ignoring the parents' concerns. So ultimately, if the school boards aren't going to deliver what the parents want, they will find an option. And actually, even without EFAs, we're seeing this happen across the country. In my mom's old district, one of the elementary schools was in one of the better, well-to-do areas. They actually are down to only 1 3rd grade class now, because so many of those parents have left. And in most communities, they wouldn't count as the well-to-do, but they were able to do that. And in that same district, they used to see a lot of 3rd graders who couldn't read. Now they're seeing them that don't know their ABCs and some that don't even recognize all of the letters. And I know you can say, yes, that's California, it doesn't matter, but they've adopted a lot of the policies that we're following on years or decades behind. So they're an early warning system. We need to wake up, see when we're following the bad lead, and fix it now. So pay attention to your schools and what's going on.
Right. The big thing too is next time there's a school election in any of your town is when people are running for office, one of the first questions you should ask them is, do you believe in parental rights? I mean, that bill failed by just a few votes, 2 votes, basically. Well, not failed, but killed for the year and next year.
Yes.
But-
Nuked from orbit, essentially.
So the point is, so you can still do it at the local level. So like in Virginia, that happened. And in New Jersey, that's happening too. But New Jersey, the Attorney General of New Jersey is going to sue those school districts that allow parental rights. So it's a big issue across the whole country, and parents have rights. And the kids belong to the parents. Like, we had a big show last time on it, so won't go through it again. But anyway, school funding. Okay, out of the budget. Okay, Litchfield gets an additional $428,000. Derry, 1.9 million. Derry's what, the third largest school district in the state?
Yes, the third largest school district in the state. We have about 33,000 kids that are pre-K through 8, and then whatever number we send to Pinkerton.
Yeah, right, yeah. But the thing is, in Litchfield, for example, on numbers, I remember 10, 15 years ago, we had 1,500 kids, 500 in each school, basically. Now we're down to 1,000 total.
Wow.
Where are the kids going? The population of the town has increased a little bit, not much. But yeah, a lot of them are going to, St. Francis is adding on, and kids are going elsewhere, being homeschooled with the EFA program, and it's a problem. And I just got a couple of charts on it, go over the budgets.
And a lot of those families left long before EFAs were available. So there's a lot that are doing it outside of that program.
Okay, you brought this. This is the. Let me move over one. Okay, this is the total. Might say state budget, and you can see 56% goes to HHS,
Which I'm still trying to understand all the functions of HHS, and I've been vice chair of that committee for 2 years now.
Right, I know. Medicaid is in there. Now, my argument with Medicaid, wasn't Obamacare supposed to take care of all that?
Oh, no, it is Obamacare. So there's the Medicaid, but the Medicaid expansion reauthorized for 7 years is directly out of that. I'm actually on the commission for the reauthorization of it, so I'll help try and make sure it's done well.
Right. And initially it was, if you're able-bodied, you can't get Medicaid. Now that's hopefully.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks, Obama.
education, that's the green piece of pie, is 10% of the budget. Okay. General government is 10%. Department of Justice and police and whatnot is, 21%. Transportation is 0.1%. And let's see, resources, protection, and development, I don't know what that is. That's only, but.
That's all the wild lands and wildlife.
Whoops.
Things, I believe.
Wrong way. Which one did I have? It must be it. Okay, wait a minute. I have another one here. Okay, now here is school funding, all of it. Where does the money come from? Okay. Now the state, I have an argument with this here, statewide property tax. That's money, that's all local money. What happened this year, part of that $486,000 is a reduction in the statewide property tax. The problem is I voted for years trying to get rid of it because it was an issue when actually there was a thing called donor towns. And that still exists some today because what's happening is there are some small towns that collect the statewide property tax that doesn't go for education because they don't have maybe 10 kids in the school system, some small towns. So why they even have it? Those used to be donor towns, but they did away with the donor town. My thing is it should have, when they passed that law many years ago, I wasn't there at the time, they made it so rather than the state getting the money and the state doling it out, they said, no, the money stays in the town and we'll collect the donor town. Well, they did away with donor towns. And the problem was now we got towns that aren't really taking it for education. So that's a problem, and my thing is, I don't think it should be in the chart because it's local taxes. Okay, bring it up again. So, and then Tobacco tax gives a small amount. Real estate transfer tax is a little. Business property tax is 13%. Business enterprise tax is 28%. Lottery is 12%. So keep those lotteries going. And both of them are real high. But tobacco settlement and utility property tax, which to me is utilities don't pay tax. Every time they brought that up, with like the poll tax actually for paying for your poles on the street, you know. And every utility, if it's a public utility, electric or anything, water or whatever, they don't pay taxes. You pay the taxes. Yeah, the town collects the taxes, but actually they increase the bill for you to pay the tax. So I think it's really ridiculous that you even have that, because utilities don't pay taxes. So anyway, that's the thing showing that. So you can see where your money comes from.
So part of it too is when we're looking at this whole funding formula, do we want to fund large administrations around the state, or do we want to fund students?
Right.
Because when we look at the fact that we're supposed to provide the cost of an adequate education, that should be looked at on a per student basis and what it costs for that student. So enrollment numbers are going down, costs are going up. And in the state budget, those numbers where it got to additional about $500,000 in Litchfield and about $2 million in Derry, that actually increased for each student from $3,500 to $4,100. And so there's other categories, free and reduced lunch, English language learner, and special education. And so if you hit all of those, instead of being $8,000, it'd be $9,300.
Right.
So we increased the per student funding by 15%.
Yeah. Also on that, the law case going on from Conval School District and Manchester and Nashua are suing.
Derry joined this lawsuit too.
Oh, heavens. But anyway, what could happen is some of the towns that are suing could actually end up losing money. Because what I've heard from different people that have been there in the court, the judge is only going to rule on the base amount. So, the way I look at it, charter schools now are getting, what, $9,000 per student. That's all they get. And they're doing a above average adequate education for $9,000. So it could be argued that the cost of an adequate education is $9,000. And then the judge is going, and so all this other stuff, English language learner, free and reduced lunch people, and all that could go away. So cities like Manchester and Nashua could lose money. So be careful what you wish for. I mean, the state isn't going to pay $19,000 per student to every town. I mean, don't have the money unless you're going to want an income tax, and nobody wants that. And every place where they've done that, like in Connecticut some years ago, they didn't lower anything because the state's going to find out, hey, we have money, we can spend it for this and this and this and this. So be careful what you wish for. And we could have saved in Litchfield like 75 cents on our tax rate per thousand. But no, we voted for that ridiculous school budget. And also, somebody did a study on it, like Erica said, where's a lot of this money going? It's not going to the teachers. It's not going to educate the students. It's going to administration. And by the way, charter schools don't have an administration.
They have a board and they're lean and mean.
Right, yeah, I mean, yeah. And somebody made the comment about, well, charter schools, they have a lot of fundraisers. Really? My grandkids and my daughter went to public school. They also have a lot of fundraisers. So, I mean, that's not a good argument. So anyway, so just be careful of that, of what you wish for, because you could end up with less money for those cities and towns. Also, county budgets. When is Rockingham's?
It was last week.
Okay, but you're also a fiscal year?
Yes, we're also
okay.
a fiscal year.
Yeah, some counties run, we don't know how, why, but Hillsborough County, I'm on the executive committee, And that's like 20, because Hillsborough County is, actually, there's 122 reps from Hillsborough County
Wow.
out of the 400. So we're the biggest county in the state, but so rather than having all 122 come in all the time, we meet monthly, the executive committee, which there are 22 of us, and it's broken down by, Manchester has some, Nashua has some, and all the rest of his towns have some. So it comes down, and it's based on demographics in the area and Democrats, Nashua, Democrats and Republicans. So in our county budget, I was on a subcommittee for the county attorney's budget, and the county attorney asked for, and we gave it to him in our subcommittee, another $395,000 for his budget, because he really needs it. Especially, what's happening in Manchester, and when I say Manchester, the Manchester court, I nearly got in trouble because somebody from Manchester, he's bad-mouthing that Manchester, and the chair said, no, he's not. But anyway, there's two courts, a Nashua court and Manchester court. Litchfield belongs to the Nashua court, which is probably better. Anyway,
Yeah.
but that was the point. So the executive committee didn't want that $395,000. It was brought up as an amendment to the budget at our full delegation meeting, and it passed by like 75-14 or something like that. So when it comes back up to the executive committee to approve again those positions, hello, you've got to vote with what the people wanted. So.
And so Rockingham County, so a few things we've done is we've raised salaries for our corrections officers, which was very necessary because
Right.
they weren't being paid enough to keep staffing levels, and we need them. They're very important. And they're also started breaking ground for a new county building, which is good because we've had different offices tucked into corners of the basement and whatnot. And so they did all of this with the county budget going up 4%. And sort of put things in perspective, the Rockingham County budget is $96 million for the year, while the Derry School Board budget is $99 million for the year.
Yeah.
So
Most cases, the county budget, when it goes down to the towns, is maybe 3% of your whole budget. And
yeah, we're 66% for education.
yeah.
And we're not bad compared to some towns.
Some towns, we're probably more than that. Also, on that, we had voted in the executive committee that Hillsborough County has a $44 million surplus. Which we've always used to offset some amount, to offset any increase. This year, there is somewhat an increase for the same reasons. The nursing home isn't filled because you can't get nurses. So they're down like 40 beds out of 100 something that they can't use because they can't find the nurses and staff. And just finished union contracts, and naturally, again, you have to pay people more because of inflation, and just like it's hurting all of us. So, so that had to happen. So that's the problem on the county side. It's where the money got to go. So we had initially, somebody at the delegation meeting may have put an amendment to decrease our 10% down to 5%. That failed, which was interesting because the day before we had a public hearing, and the mayor of Nashua came in and said, oh, his taxes, county taxes, are going to go up $3 million for the whole city of Nashua. I bit my tongue because I was going to ask him, well, what's your city taxes gone up? But I didn't know the answer, so if I would have asked. But anyway, it was funny. So he definitely wanted the 10%, and that would cut some of it. But when it came to voting on raising it to 10%, which passed, that was the exec committee, but just about every rep from Nashua voted against it. In other words, they voted against their mayor. Which is, and I asked a couple of them that the other day and yesterday, and they said, we don't like the mayor. But anyway, so that's interesting. So hopefully, so on Litchfield, your budget, county taxes for a normal 300,000 or so house would be about 25 more money, which is a whole lot less than it would have been. It would have been like $50 if we didn't do the 10%. Somebody put in an amendment, wanted to go to 17%. Now, just like your town, we have a reserve or a surplus every year. That pays the county, and the same in Derry, in Rockingham County, the budget starts tomorrow, July 1st. Okay, but they're not going to get any tax money until December, when you pay your taxes. So what does the county do, just like the towns do, for doing those 6 months? They do use the reserve. So if you can't take too much out of the reserve before, not going to be able to pay any salaries or bills for a month. So the same thing happens in towns too, while you keep that. So anyway, anything more to add before we go to some of the...
No,
bills?
well, for those of us who take our checks in, I know I need to go pay my July property tax bill.
I paid mine the other day.
Yes, so don't forget, if you write checks instead of having it in mortgage, in escrow,
Right,
go show up.
due today.
Ours are due on Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
Because
good.
of the holiday.
Yeah, good,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
I was going to tell you, if you haven't paid your tax, you better pay them. Yeah, anyway.
Well, yeah, but even if it's late, better to pay them one day late than a month late.
Oh,
That
yeah.
interest racks
Oh,
up.
right. Yeah, my thing on that was, it's like, the problem with people, and like I asked our town clerk, I said, because mine wasn't that, what's the average people paying? And she said about 4,000. It's for 6 months. Divide that by 26 weeks. So you think $125 a week is good for your property taxes, for paying taxes? Mine is less than that, because I don't live in a big house. But anyway, so mine like was $2,600. So I'm paying $100 a week for the privilege of living in this town.
Well, but if you think about that too, that's $400 a month or $500 a month.
Right.
And yes, rents are high, but the landlords, the housing providers have to pay property taxes too.
Right.
They have to pay the mortgage rates too.
Right.
They have to
So
pay the
they're
repair
going up.
costs.
So a lot of people don't know that because it's in their escrow, in their mortgage. So they might get a thing from the bank, your mortgage has gone up, but okay, but then they don't know what they're paying in taxes unless they really look at the tax bill. So I request everybody doing that. Okay. Now, some bills that passed this year, which we voted on, HB 170. Now, something to do with education. By the 5th grade, kids have to learn cursive and multiplication tables. I didn't have anything to do with that, but anyway. And the thing is, cursive, it used to be, when they took the SATs, you had to write out, I promise I'm not cheating or something to that effect. But everybody printed it because nobody knows how to write. And the thing is, one of the things about writing is, how can you read any of the historic documents if you don't know cursive? And remember, when I went to school in the 1st grade, you were expected to have known how to print before you got to school. In other words, at home. So in the 1st grade, we had kindergarten. In the 1st grade, there on the wall was cursive letters. You ready? And I never. Yeah. So,
Yeah, we want to make it so cursive doesn't become the new Rosetta Stone, right?
Right.
To get the ancient hieroglyphs.
Right. And the point is, and multiplication. And I remember this old movie from years and years ago, The Smartest Person in the World. It was after some big apocalypse and whatnot. The smartest person in the world was somebody that could add. Because everybody used the calculator. Yeah. So, anyway, also, HB 207 increases the school district unanticipated funds. It used to be $5,000 that they didn't have to have a hearing on. Now it's $20,000. that 5,000 wasn't been for years. Also, they can increase, sometimes the schools give a 1-year teacher certificate, so while they're doing CHET, they can extend that if they want to, HB 654. And here's one of Erica's famous bills,
Yes.
SB 118. This is one,
Yeah. So-
common sense or stupidity.
So this one was a bill to require, to say in law that if you're under 2 years of age, you need to be in a rear-facing car seat. It doesn't matter how big you are, doesn't matter how tall you are, doesn't matter if it doesn't fit in your car. You need to be in a rear-facing seat. You know, it sounds good on the surface because assuming we could see the road in front of us, every single one of us would be safer riding backwards just because of the way our bodies are built. But when you look at the real world, there's other parts about it too. So we actually do want to encourage kids to stay rear facing up until they're 3 or 4, as long as they can actually fit in the car seat. And it's fine if their legs are all bunched up. Kids don't break their legs from that. Kids break their legs riding down the slides with their parents when they get stuck, not in a car accident sitting backwards. Right. So the really big problem with this, if the governor were to veto it, I'd be so happy. But the really big problem is right now when you talk to your pediatrician, they say, you ask them, how long should my kids stay rear facing? And they should tell you as long as possible. With this, if it goes into law, what they'll say is, well, New Hampshire says you can turn your kid forward facing at 2 years old. And that's actually a huge harm. That really does a disservice to our kids. So, 94% of kids in New Hampshire are already riding rear facing up until age 2. It's, it's not a problem, but I think we're going to hurt kids by doing this.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't see how it's enforceable because the kids don't have IDs. Mm-hmm. The point is, and the current law, I believe, is height and weight.
No, there's no. So a lot of other states do have exemptions for height and weight.
No, I mean not exemption for rear-facing seat, isn't it? Based on height and weight.
So on a child restraint. So a child in New Hampshire needs to be in an appropriate child restraint up until the age of 7 or I think 4'9" in height. But that's up until age 7, so that includes boosters. We don't tell the parents when they turn their kids forward-facing because, unless this goes into law, because you want to keep them rear-facing as long as possible. And you can't even fit a baby into any forward-facing seat.
No,
and when you go home from the hospital, they'll actually hold your kid hostage if you don't have a car seat that's rear-facing.
Right, yeah.
So.
And I know if in newer cars, they have all kinds of brackets and whatnot to connect to and all that. Yeah. I know mine.
There's so much. The seats are so much better than when I had my first kid 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago. But the little baby seats, the ones you see everybody carrying them around, I call them the baby bucket. Most 2-year-olds can't fit in those, so you'll need to buy another seat that might end up being so big that you end up having to move the front seat up into the front, and your family can't all fit in the same car.
Right.
And that can be a reason to turn forward because maybe you won't be able to afford food or health care if you have to buy a new car, and you have to look at all of the different things, and that family might have to turn forward sooner. But fortunately, kids are really safe, even in any of these car seats.
I know. I mean, we killed it last year, and
yeah, we had a whole commission. We had a study commission, and the prime sponsor of this bill was on that commission. And our report said, "Don't make a law. We don't need a law." Yet he went and made a law.
Yeah,
I don't understand it.
Oh well. Anyway,
Sorry.
Okay. SB 244. That's if you make false reports of shooters or bombs, is a Class B felony now instead of a misdemeanor.
Gee, if that was enforced, then some kids would have been a lot safer at that child care, or at least one of the people involved.
Right. So, HB 601, you want to?
610 or 601.
Which one?
So are you talking about the pain one? So that one I hadn't put in. So we actually have one for therapeutic pain, for cannabis for therapeutic pain. The way that they wrote it before was that you had to try opiates and fail them. You had to have a surgery and fail that surgery if you had pain. And there's now actually data saying that it can help some people. So basically the doctor can write a certification to certify somebody for cannabis on that. And in that, there's actually a study committee to see about doing this whole state-run model for cannabis legalization. So everybody that's involved on that commission are people that want to work towards a state-controlled model. And if there's a way to do it, I think that they're going to come up with that, and the intent is for that study committee to introduce legislation for next year, because the governor has said he would support a state-run model. So that was in one of my other committee of the conference, and that was also a lot of fun because we were working around some other points. But I think that's really good, especially because there's this thing most people haven't heard of. It's NEPO Strike Force. It's the New England Pharmaceutical Prescription Opiate Strike Force. This is the DEA in the U.S. justice system going after doctors that are prescribing opiates, and that means doctors who are giving you Vicodin after a hip replacement. They're giving people Tylenol because they're afraid that they're going to go to jail for 20 years for giving somebody opiates, even when they need to be able to heal. I don't know about you, but I've had orthopedic surgery. I have a rod in my femur, in my thigh bone, and you need to get up and walk as soon as possible. If you don't have pain relief, you can't do that. And in a hip and knee replacement, if you're not moving it from the start, it's actually not going to work. So if they keep pushing it that way, I don't even know why somebody would bother getting a joint replacement.
Yeah.
So
Might be after me to get my hip done. But anyway.
sorry. So we need to figure out how to fix that strike force. We need to talk to our federal delegation and get them to back off.
The problem with that too, there was a problem with doctors over-prescribing. But the thing is, it's still personal responsibility. I've had opiates for different things, including one for hand surgery. And the doctor gives me, I never filled it. I'm saying, oh, I got a cut in my hand and you're giving me an opioid? I mean, it's stupid.
Well, but,
and most of my opioids that I've gotten for other things ended up in the police call box. I take them as needed. That's what the prescription should say. Take as needed, no more than every 4 hours. Not take every 4 hours. I mean, people, I got to take these every 4 hours. No, you don't. You know?
And so that's a lot more of the knowledge. My mother-in-law actually died on Palm Sunday. She had been in with an abscess the size of a softball. She was in the hospital and they were giving her tramadol. That's the sort of thing you get for menstrual cramps. It's very, very low dose. I know some women have them a lot worse than the rest of us, but she should have, when she went to another hospital, they had her on prescription fentanyl. And at that point, you saw her body relax because she couldn't even heal because her body was fighting the pain. So she never had a chance to heal. She went into that other hospital, she was intubated, and she passed a couple of days later, mostly because they denied her pain care. And, yes, opiates kill people when they overdose, but opiates kill people when they can't heal correctly either.
Right.
So,
right, yeah.
it's, like they said long ago, dose makes the poison.
Right. Also, we had a fun day yesterday.
Yes.
We did all these committee of conference bills that passed and whatnot. One good one, and it passed by one vote, 186 to 185. Stratford County. All the counties in the state, there's 10 counties, 9 of them, your county commissioners like Litchfield and Hillsborough and Rockingham. The commissioners are districted according to population. Like in Hillsborough County, Manchester has their own. Nashua, Litchfield, Hudson, and Pelham, I think, is with the Nashua, and all the rest of the towns have their own commissioner. Stratford County, all 3 commissioners are at large. So if we did that in Hillsborough County, all 3 commissioners would probably come from Manchester. No, that doesn't work. So there was a bill put in to make it so the county commissioners in Stratford County also have to be districted. The arguments given by people mainly from Stratford County say, no, we did redistricting last year. We can't do it again for another 10 years. Even though I'm going, no common sense here. You can't redistrict if there's nothing to redistrict. So Stratford County didn't have any districts. So where are you going to redistrict? So, no common sense. Sometimes you really like to beat your head against the wall. So anyway, that passed by one vote, 186 to 185. So now Stratford County, if the governor doesn't veto it, will have to...
They will have finally created districts, which will be nice.
Right.
Yes.
And the thing is, initially it was a vote to table. That failed by one vote, which was the same as passing. Okay. Another one, HB 275, 187 to 185, that's to schools approved by school, for school tuition by a school board. In other words, your school board said, yes, we're going to approve like St. Francis for tuition or any other, anything. But it's your school board that's got to do it, and yet it only passed by 2 votes. Anyway.
Well, and that one was to let it so that if they were going to send somebody and a parent wanted to go to an expensive school, they could pay the difference.
Right.
So it was based on wherever else they could send them. But if there was another school that was more expensive, it would simply allow the parent to pay the difference.
Yeah, and a lot of that is due to if might be a bullying situation, and you know, so it's a good bill. Another one that passed by 1 vote, 186 to 185, relative to chartered school joint legislative oversight committee. I mean, yes, you want an oversight committee, but
Yeah, and it's all about selling a charter school and basically laying out that you need an independent person to give a quote and so that you know what a fair price is. But it all comes down to all of these divided votes. Everything divided that comes out of education. It's like that video game when I was in college. It's not all your bases belong to us. All your kids belong to us, is
Right.
what about half of that committee believes.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's a kind of a fundamental difference there. We believe that parents are important and they get to make those choices, and they think that every single kid needs to be stuck in their local school with
Okay,
no
another
input.
big one, controversial one, which didn't end up being that controversial because the vote was 271 to 98. And this was something that really haven't come up in New Hampshire at all. HB 315, prohibiting provocation from, in other words, the victim, if somebody's being charged with murder, they can't say, well, I did the murder because I don't believe in LBG, blah, 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 and the person was gay, so he didn't have a right to live. You can't, that's against the law. Yeah, it was right
Well,
now.
it's not against the law, but if I was on the jury, I'd say that was your reason, you're guilty.
Right, I know, but that's the thing at the open name. Back in the old days in the South, well, I mean, type thing, but it doesn't happen. It's also in law saying, no, I mean, basically saying, I mean, in general, you can't do that. But then we have the things called jury nullification, where the jury can say, no, that law's no good. But the point is, you can't do that, and nobody really, it was never done anyway, but it's a way of people just making.
But they did narrow it down pretty well. They made
Right.
sure that it doesn't touch the self-defense statute. So if you're claiming self-defense,
Right.
that's entirely different.
That's
Because if
different.
somebody has attacked you or they're right behind you and you're in fear of your life, if you're able to show that you were in fear of your life and you had to stop them, that's different, because that's not a plea down from a murder to a manslaughter.
Right.
And there was a lot of confusion over that.
Right, yeah.
I voted for the bill, but in my mind, if somebody is that much of a bigot, have them tell the jury, and the jury will say, "You think that was a reason to kill somebody? I disagree."
Right, yeah, oh yeah, I mean, what jury in New Hampshire would, I mean, this isn't the Deep South 50 years ago,
Exactly.
100 years ago, I mean, I mean, it's just one of those things to gain publicity, And, I mean, somebody called, I think, for a roll call, but didn't go. We didn't do any roll call yesterday. And I think somebody, and you have to have 10 people to approve a roll call. And I think got 2.
I had somebody who needed to come in my aisle at that time, but I made sure not to stand up while they were doing that
right,
count.
yeah. I was in the back. Yeah. But anyway, so I think, look for that. We filled up the time, double time today, so
Yeah, thanks for
we
having
got
me on
everything
again.
go. Yeah, so hopefully maybe in September, because we don't do anything in the House supposedly, not supposed to. And so September, when we come up with new bills and whatnot, I already have 1 or 2 that I'm thinking of. And so anyway,
Yeah,
well, thank you.
we'll file new bills in September. Any of the standing committees keep meeting, and then we have retained bills like the ones on the bail reform.
Right.
So pay attention to the
And we have
issues
an
that
election law
care
on the
about.
primary date. But
Exactly.
anyway, so thank you, Erica, again.
Thank you.
Coming, welcome back.
Thank you.
Good day.
Bye.